Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey. And by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Yo, Gary.
John, how are you?
I'm doing well. We're going to learn something about Buick today.
We're going to learn something about Buick, but I got to tell you this. I'm not going to quiz you on this, but this is sort of a funny thing that on May 4th, 1904, Charles Rolls met Henry Royce at a hotel. And it's sort of funny. Like, you think about it, like, they're real people, right? And they get together and they say, let's do something. And here we are all these years later, and there's still Rolls-Royce automobiles. It's just very, very amazing to me how this industry grew from individuals.
Yeah, no, in fact, what I'm astonished by is how much of a family business it still is. Ford family still involved, the Toyota family still involved, the Porsche family still involved. Who are the people at BMW? I'm blanking out on their name right now. But family, the Renault family would love to get back into it. The French government won't let them. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Honda family, they're not really involved. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing that these things still have a lot, these massive global industrial corporations still have a lot of family ties.
Right. And I think that this is completely atypical of businesses of that magnitude.
Yeah, that's right.
So anyway, back to Buick.
Let's bring in our guests. We got
Russell.
Sam Russell, and also Stephanie Brinley from S&P Global Mobility.
Hi.
Hello.
So welcome to you both.
Sam, so much to talk about with Buick, but the one thing that in prepping for this show, I hadn't really caught on. In the first quarter, sales for Buick in the U.S. up 99%. I had no idea. I knew, things are getting better. Chips are coming back. Inventory's building, but 99%, what the hell's going on there?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, it speaks to the strength of where the brand is today. A lot of people don't realize how fast we transformed this brand into a premium SUV brand over time. I think it still falls on some people when you say we only build SUVs. They're like, wait, what? Where did the cars go? And it's been always very linked to knowing what the customer wants and making sure that we deliver a great portfolio of product. I think it also leans into the fact that, with the chip shortages, there's a slightly lower base to work off of, obviously, last year. So when you look at the year-over-year numbers, I don't want to celebrate everything. It was a tough year last year for the brand.
I know. I hear what you're saying, but nobody else is up 99%.
No, and I think that, during the pandemic, we launched three really nice SUVs, right? The Encore GX as a replacement to the Encore eventually, which we're seeing that kind of play out right now. The Envision in 2021, just probably, in my opinion, the best compact SUV out there. And then gave the Enclave a really nice set of improvements last year. And so all three of those premium SUVs are playing really well for us in the market. We're building all of them at pretty good volume. And customers that have been waiting around to get their hands on one have finally been able to find inventory at dealers. And we're accelerating past expectations, I think. And the Envista is just going to add on to that. So really excited about the momentum we're building for the brand right now.
So Sam, let me ask you, and you said that people ask you, where did the sedans go? What do you answer when they ask you that question?
I think it really has to do with how we've seen the trends in the marketplace go, right? If you've been watching the mix change in the marketplace over time, just the quality of the vehicles, the variety of vehicles available in SUVs, what we're able to do in terms of the overall architectures, design, performance, really meeting the customers where their needs are. They want vehicles that have beautiful designs. They have all the premium amenities that they would get comfortable with in a sedan maybe 5-10 years ago. You can deliver a lot of what a sedan used to deliver in what is a much more versatile package, I think. And customers are they've been on this journey, and we've been tracking it very closely and able to deliver a really compelling portfolio of premium SUVs. And I think that's what we're seeing in sales today. It's just a great portfolio at work.
Steph.
Yeah. I mean, that is the way that it's headed. The sedan question is always curious to me. For years, we've talked about where the bottom for sedans is, and I keep waiting for it. I mean, clearly that's where the market is going. And actually, this sort of leads into the Envista that we're wanted to talk about today too, because that is being positioned as a crossover, but feels much more like a tall wagon hatchback than it does a more traditional CUV space. It's a gorgeous car. I'll start off with that. I do like it quite a bit. But do you really think this is going to be able to kind of keep somebody who would prefer a sedan a little bit happier? Or is it just another facet to what the utility vehicle looks like?
I think it actually is a really nice mix of a couple of things. One, it gives you the versatility of a crossover or an SUV in terms of its interior space, its overall, how it packages space in terms of its overall value composition. But then it also gives you a lot of the dynamic features that you would see in a sedan previously, right? So it's got a really nice combination of what I would say is the best of both worlds. And then within the overall design language that we introduced a year ago with the Wildcat concept, really bringing those proportions, those themes to life in a vehicle that is honestly not only unique in the marketplace today, but just I think it's really stunning. It's just a great looking vehicle. And then I think you add to that a market dimension, which is what we call the approachable price point. You look back before the pandemic, 2019, I think the average transaction prices in the marketplace, if you looked where most of the market or about half of the market was transacting, is somewhere in the realm of $30,000 and below. And you coming out of the pandemic with all the dynamics we've seen in the marketplace, only about 20% of the industries at that price point or below. And introducing a vehicle like this with this kind of mix of design, versatility, the sedan dynamics, the driving dynamics of a vehicle in a package that I think for a lot of new buyers is going to be a package, and putting it on the market at under $24,000 as a starting out price, I think it's bringing together so many pieces into one great product to be the entry position for the Buick portfolio going forward.
What's your thinking on the pricing on that? I mean, look, the public's going to love it. $24,000 for a Buick, right? But I mean, what's that do to the brand? This is supposed to be premium, right? And it's a few $1,000s more than its counterpart at Chevrolet, the new Trax that's there. I mean, it seems like you're dumbing down the brand to go for volume here.
I think it's trying to meet customers at every life stage. Actually, we think we can deliver.
Oh,
Did we lose him?
Frozen up on us.
Am I back?
Yeah,
yes.
You're back. Yeah, sorry, you froze up there.
And
hello?
Again.
Am I back?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Or not.
I think ultimately for us, we believe at any price point, right? It's about understanding where our customers are in the space, what they would expect as a mainstream experience versus what a premium experience coming from Buick is. So any Buick you're going to get, for example, all the engineering quality of quiet tuning. You're going to get acoustic glass. You're going to get triple seals. You're going to get sound deadening that makes the experience inside the vehicle quieter than a mainstream product. You're going to get the attention to detail in terms of the choices we make from materials, et cetera, the type of technology giving them all the safety customers have come to expect. So you really can package a vehicle to provide a better than mainstream, this premium experience that the brand delivers. And, I don't see it as dumbing it down for the volume. I see it as across the spectrum of affordability, there are people that want to reward themselves with something that's just better than standard. And I think Buick can do that with unique products at $25,000, and we can do it at $60,000. And it's really about getting the mix of product, content, styling, and execution right in a way that we deliver against what we believe to be our DNA, which is provide that premium product and premium experience in the marketplace.
So let me ask you.
That seems.
We're all jumping.
Hold on. Maybe dumbing it down wasn't the right word, but you go back to Sloan's, market segmentation by brand, and historically, GM always kept great separation between the brands and the price points and the segments that they competed in, and now it just seems to be overlapping, and that's why I was really asking, why bring a premium brand pricing so low?
I think we try to keep our brand tenants in terms of how we position all the brands very consistent. So if picture of brands from Chevy, GMC, Buick, and as you build up, when we do have platforms that are shared, we have very specific strategies in terms of content and pricing that we put in place. But every vehicle has to be not only position in a segment. You can't really stretch. You're trying to sell a small SUV in the small SUV segment. There is a relevant price range where your product's going to be well positioned, and then there are price ranges where you're just going to be outside the market, and then the options upstream in terms of size, technology, and other products, even within our own portfolio, that are going to compete with that. So I'd say there is a really usable range within the price segmentation of each product category that you got to be close to, right? You create the separation within our brand tenants, but you got to stay in the core of the market. So we like to say that Buick's positioned we should transact somewhere between 10 and 15% above the average of any segment we're in, right? And that's kind of how we position the brand. So we do see that what we deliver in terms of content, but not so far.
Yikes. So Sam, do you see the Envista attracting a younger demographic, and that's perhaps part of the strategy of being able to make a Buick accessible to people who probably are looking at giant student debts and things like that?
Yeah, I think there's two elements to where we think this vehicle will be great for us. It will bring in a younger audience just for the nature of its very price point, and I think it allows us to introduce the brand to an audience that may be wholly unfamiliar, right? You talk about a 20-year-old today and how we position the brand to a 20 to 35-year-old. They may not have the same kind of knowledge of the history of the brand as some of our more experienced buyers. And so you get to introduce the brand to them with a very exciting is we believe that, given where the brand's been, where we are today, and what we aspire to do in the future, having excellent products that allow us to conquest from the marketplace really brings people closer to where the brand is today. We talk a lot about, the history of the brand and what people think the brand might be still in their mind, and changing that perception from being the sedan brand that a lot of people probably familiar with from yesteryear to where we are today as a premium SUV, and where we're headed in the short term to become an all EV brand. That's a very fast transition to help people come along. So having a vehicle that is approachable and will allow us to conquest new customers really helps us tell the story for the whole brand and get people up to speed and kind of joining us for the future of the brand.
It's interesting to me talking about the pricing of this vehicle, which I think it's the right time, especially right now for a product at this price point. But if I think back to like Buick Verano and the entry level that we had at that point, this product feels like it's more competitive time for time on a content and technology and design level. And when I looked at the Envista a few weeks ago at the back with you guys at the Design Dome, one of the things that was super interesting to me is the difference between the ST and the Avenir versions. The styling is definitely distinct between the two, and you still have content in both places, and people can really kind of get to what they respond to. and the Envista and the Trax as well too. They've just come to market at a great price, and I really think they're really well contented and both nicely designed. So I think these are going to be two products that for 2023 and 2024 are just going to be in a really sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Envista really encapsulates a lot of things that are coming together at a time where maybe in previous products you didn't have that opportunity. You have a new logo, you have a new design language. It's the first expression of a vehicle that's fully designed under that new language. We have this aspiration to where we're going in the future, and it's laying the foundation for that. And then, like you said, the way we've developed our strategies around broadening the appeal for the brand, right? Instead of having one good look that's kind of built to a couple of different price points, we really wanted to expand the appeal of the brand by having really three distinct looks. At the Design Dome, when we were doing the backgrounders, you got to see the ST and the Avenir. We also have the Preferred, which is our price of entry model. They all look great. They all look like the personas they're supposed to be, right? The one's our entry level model. It's a beautiful vehicle. One's a slightly sportier execution, which is the ST. And then you have our, what we call the ultimate expression of Buick luxury in the Avenir. And all three of those strategies have worked really hard. And I don't like to commit to mixes, but I will tell you that as a vehicle that was kind of born with all these pieces coming together at the right time, we're going to see such a balanced mix as we start to sell these vehicles. We actually think we'll see probably almost an even split across all three trims. I think it's like a 40-30-30, which would be incredible, particularly for the Avenir, a brand that we introduced in 2018 when we redid the Enclave, and has been growing in popularity just over the years, and as we've introduced new models. And the nice thing about Envista is that it becomes the last entrant in that strategy to fill out the entire portfolio, to give us an ST and an Avenir on every model in the lineup. And we're really excited about that. We're looking forward to this one, equally being successful. I love the idea of just someone being able to buy an Avenir at around $30,000. I think there'll be nothing like it on the streets. So it'd be great to see.
So one of the things that I find interesting about this car is that it is a small SUV. And, I think some people have the notion that everything is getting bigger, bigger, and bigger. And yet, if you look at the Buick portfolio, it seems as though you guys are beginning to more or less right size it toward the smaller rather than to the larger. Is that a correct assessment?
I think what we've tried to do is really play in the segments that where we think we can offer a product portfolio to meet customers where their needs are. And I think the size component of the small SUV is important. Buick was one of the first ones into the small SUV segment back in 2013, right? Back when there was only 4 competitors. It was much nicer market shares back in those days. You only got 4 competitors. It's a different ballgame. But kind of expanding on that idea of, I think, the bigger is better mantra. I think there is something to be said about that in terms of generations of products slightly getting bigger. But I think you also have to find the right equilibrium in terms of what your customers are looking for, right? Bigger, you go bigger from small, you're in a compact, and from there you go to a midsize. And so we do offer, I'll call it the small, medium, large cadence of products, all with a great Buick experience. But specifically for these two products, the small SUV segment has been one of the fastest growing segments in the industry. And I think with the Envista and GX as a very nice combination of products that offer distinct styling, distinct advantages across the two products, meet customers that are at that price point, have a need. I think the overall convenience of having a vehicle that is fundamentally easy to drive. When we look at urban opportunities in the marketplace, making sure that you're not oversized for those kinds of opportunities. So it fits really well with the portfolio, right? And if you need something bigger, we can offer that as well and go to an Envision and from there on out. So I think there is every segment exists because customers have distinct needs. And I think both of these vehicles are going to provide a unique set of benefits in the marketplace for a Buick customer.
So we've got the Envista that's front drive only, and the Encore GX, it's all-wheel drive and a little bit smaller and a little bit more expensive. I talked to you guys before, and I see where you have those positioned, and I see the logic behind it. But how much do you expect to see a little bit of customer pushback on front drive only for Envista? Do you anticipate any sort of, but hey, wait, why is the smaller one more expensive, and why can't I get all-wheel drive on the Envista, because it looks so much different? Somebody might really not want, that the same person may be more attracted to the Envista than they are the Encore G, or different than the GX. And so do you expect a little bit of pushback on that? And, what are we doing to the definition of utility vehicle if you have something that's just going to be front drive only? It's not necessarily the only one that's like that, but are we really challenging what a utility vehicle definition really is?
I think there's two ways to look at it. One, if a customer needs a great SUV with all-wheel drive and is looking for that kind of functionality, we'll be able to offer them a beautiful package in the Encore GX. I think we're there. We're in that price point. The GX also starts under $30,000, and it really is our price of entry to the all-wheel drive segment. When I look at the Envista, I think because people are going to be I expect a lot of people to be really enamored with the design and really want the vehicle. And some people are going to be in the markets where all-wheel drive would have been an added benefit. I think I'm just as curious as you are to see how much pushback we'll get. We looked at this car as really being the crossover between sedans and looking at people that have been orphaned by products, by a multitude of brands, segment switchers that are really kind of stepping into SUVs, but not really convinced that they want to go all the way to an SUV, but they're coming from a sedan as well. And most of the sedan market has been front wheel drive for a very long time. And understanding that those customers have adapted their lifestyles to driving with front wheel drive, being in the north or the south of the country. I think we're going to provide them with the added versatility of what we call a crossover, without all the added costs of having to go fully into an SUV, particularly in markets where sedans have continued to thrive, which is, if you look at the Smile states, you've seen a lot of sedans in the big urban areas. And so we thought it was a good trade-off to give people the right technology, the comfort, the size, the versatility, the driving dynamics, and really package it in a very unique value proposition that happens to be front-wheel drive. But I think I'm curious. I don't think we'll see a lot of pushback because I think there's a huge market of underserved front-wheel drivers out there at this price point.
Good answer.
Who do you see as being the competitor for the Envista specifically, and then Buick overall?
Oh, well, that's a hard question to answer because we talk about it when I talk with my team, we really talk about two things, right? Who are we competing with and who are we competing for? When we compete with, it's people who define their space in the market a lot like ours, which is in the premium space. So it's brands that exist above the mainstream price points, content levels, and sophistication of their product, but haven't gone all the way to a full-on luxury brand. And in that space, we really see Acura, Infiniti. There's some other unique brands in terms of their pricing, like Volkswagen and Mazda, that are kind of in that space. But we're not over there trying to cannibalize their sales, because what we see is the premium space is really what we call a move-up space. We're looking at people in the mainstream. You're looking at your Honda, Toyota, Ford, and saying, okay, if these people want an improved experience and they really want to go to something that's a little bit more premium, what can I offer them and how can I bring them in? And so that's who we compete for, right? I call it the pond is a lot bigger when you look at those mainstream brands to pull people up into the brands in the premium space. So when we look at it, I think our segment competition is really small SUVs that are positioned like we are. So Mazda has some products out there that are in that space, but really it's competing with sedans. It's the people that have come out of sedans. And we've really seen three behaviors in the marketplace happening. There are orphans, people whose product no longer exists and they have to transition. people that are shopping segments, cross shoppers, and then there's people that their own brands in terms of all this price movement have really moved away in terms of affordability, and we're going to be able to offer them two great products to stay within a range of pricing that is highly competitive in the marketplace. And like I said, I think it's a very underserved market today. And so, that's how we framed up the strategy for these two products, is really looking at those three segments, those three customer groups, if you will.
Do you see it more first time new car buyers, or maybe second or third new car?
I think it'll be a mix. First time car buyers never represent really a majority of your business. You always tend to get people that have been buying cars for a while. But I think this one, particularly the Envista, has an opportunity to have a higher than normal mix of first time buyers, just because it's such an attractive package at an approachable price.
So we haven't. When is this car going to become available? And what's your feeling about availability of the product?
We build this car in Korea, so we will. Dealers actually start ordering this month. We start building them this month as well, and the first units will start arriving in July into dealer lots. So really excited to see that. The new GX is arriving this month on dealer lots, and so 2 months after the GX, we get the Envista.
So are you comfortable that there'll be enough product available if consumers want to buy them?
I think so. I would. I'll be optimistic. Actually, I'm hoping it's a more popular vehicle than what we're planning on building right now. I think as we bring it into the marketplace, I'd like to see very strong demand for these products, which I think we will. And we'll build as many as we can, obviously, and meet the market where the demand is. I always at this moment in a launch, I'm always very optimistic and very hopeful of where I think the vehicle is going to land in the marketplace. And particularly for these two products, I think we're gonna find ourselves turning over inventory very quickly. I'll put it that way. I think we're going to build to demand, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of inventory building up.
Well, look, we're about to wrap up this segment here. So Sam, I want to thank you for coming on and bringing us up to speed with what you're doing with the Envista.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Enjoyed this. A great conversation. Thank you.
Thank
you,
Sam.
good. We're going to take a quick commercial break right now, give a shout out to both of our sponsors, and we got a lot of news to talk about of what's been happening in the industry in the last week. We'll be back in just a moment.
How do Bridgestone tires stop shorter on wet roads? It's their HydroTrack technology. But you don't have to know how the science works, just where the brake is. What really matters is they're Bridgestone.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what BorgWarner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry.
Thank you, Bridgestone, and thank you, BorgWarner, for making this possible. Boy, a lot to talk about. Steph, I especially want to ask you, what do you think about all these price cuts that are going on? I mean, Tesla kicked it off and they chopped prices, then they added prices back, and then they cut prices, and some automakers have jumped in and some have not. And what do you make of it all?
It's a challenge, partially because for everybody but Tesla, electric vehicles aren't profitable yet. So there's a problem. But I mean, if you look at Mustang Mach-E pricing that got cut a little bit, they also went all to the lithium phosphate standard range battery. So that would suggest that their cost eased a little bit as well. Whether it eased as much as they dropped pricing, that's not something I know, but it does seem like there was a change in what they were putting in the vehicle that made a difference too, rather than just kind of a random, we're afraid, so let's go. And at Tesla saying, in the earnings call, we could take it down, Elon Musk being full of grandiose kind of statements, saying we can take it down to zero, margin because we're going to get our money somewhere else.
Yeah, one day when FSD actually works as a fully autonomous system, maybe.
Yeah, I didn't say agreed, but that's what he said. It does remind me, the industry as a whole outside of EVs has played the price to volume game before, and no one has won that game.
What do you mean price to volume game?
Price low to get high volume. It doesn't work on a long-term basis. And so I think that's a really dangerous space to kind of start thinking you have to cut EV prices below what you can sell them below what they're profitable at. And it's a challenge right now because they are more expensive than traditional cars. But the other thing I think too with electric vehicles, if you buy one in 2023, maybe even halfway through 24, you're still making some significant changes. Depending on where you live, some infrastructure is in better shape than it is necessarily in southeastern Michigan, but you're making a change. So some of those changes are good. Some of them are just inconvenient. Right now, you're still a buyer who's like, I'm willing to do that. I want this product for right now. So if it costs a little bit more and somebody who's kind of curious but not really ready to do that, I'm not sure that dropping the price $5,000 is going to be the thing that makes that person willing to make the leap. If their concern is about range, if their concern is about charging, if their concern is that they feel like it's not going to do what they need to do, it probably will. But if they feel like it's not about the price. And so when you see a lot of the price changes, I think it has more opportunity to sway somebody who's already committed to buying an electric vehicle from one brand to another. But right now, we're also still in a year where we're not going to be able to really build as many cars as we think we could sell if we could build everything. So it gets to be an awkward question all the way around.
So John, let me ask you a
drop
question.
your prices to increase your sales, but you really can't build any more than you're building now, and you're selling everything that you have, and everything is on order. And then what is this point here?
Yeah,
of dropping
cut prices, right?
Your volume. It's not working.
Yeah,
you're not going to increase your volume by dropping prices if you can't build enough in the first place.
All right, John. So Farley told a Wall Street Journal forum this week that, quote, you do not want to commoditize the product. And then he added, the resale value for people who bought at higher prices is awful. They never forget. Okay. And here's the guy who runs the company who cut prices this week. So people who bought the product the week before paid a higher price. What's going on there with Farley?
Well, Stephanie made a really good point. Ford's putting LFP batteries in the base Mach-E right now, so they can justify, hey, look, we cut the price because we put in a cheaper battery and it doesn't get as much range, blah blah blah. So they didn't just cut the price; they made it a product change there.
Yep.
I think the real thing that I wanted to get into here is Bloomberg reported today that it looks like inventory is building at Tesla. And there's another guy that they quoted at Troy Teslike who said last year Tesla had a backlog of 476,000 orders. Right now, they claim it's only 72,000. So a 400,000 drop in back orders. And I'm wondering if building inventory, a big drop in backlog is what's prompted this price cut at Tesla. And as we saw, in the first quarter numbers, it really didn't move the needle a whole lot. I mean, I think their sales still grew at what? It was over 30.
About 21%, 20% or so. No, the quarter was 38. It was closer to 40, but it wasn't.
Yeah. So still very good. Everybody would love that. But when you're used to Tesla posting 50% increases almost every quarter, they're still in a very good spot, but, I'm just curious what you think. And I thought you made a great point. If you're capacity constrained because of a chip shortage or other things, right? What are you cutting prices for? I mean, don't get me wrong. As a consumer, I think it's great. But if I'm looking at my bottom line as a car company, why would you do this?
Well, I mean, there's a few things. One, I can't speak to what their inventory level is or what their back order is because I don't know. I mean, I saw the same Bloomberg article that you did, but I don't know if I don't know where they came up with that. So fair enough. I can't say if it's true or not. But Tesla does have more competition, and like I said, we're still in a space where if electric vehicles were 7% or so of U.S. sales in the first quarter, and if you look at an innovator adapter chart, you're not really into early adapters. You're still in the innovator stage until 13% or so. So we're still with this early adapter stage. So Tesla may be seeing where it's kind of easy is a little generous term, but where the easy buyers are soaked up.
Yeah.
And it's going to take, and maybe just take more work, because if you want to get from EV Intender and EV Evangelist to EV Curious, that's going to take work other than just building it. And maybe price cutting isn't necessarily the right answer. I would say it doesn't really make consumers happy. I think Farley's right that it can make a consumer that already bought a car angry, and it does hurt residuals in some way. And we'll see how that plays out. And it's an interesting strategy. It's very hard because Tesla's not super transparent about their orders and their inventory. They're not super transparent about where they're selling their vehicles. They're just not. And they've been consistently not transparent, but they're not transparent. So we don't have a good sense of that. And we do have a sense, though, that there has to be concern somewhere, whether it's just concern because they can see the competition coming. And they know it's making a difference. I don't know, but they're going to have to work harder than just dropping price to get EV Curious buyers in, because EV Curious buyers are going to have more choices, especially in 2 years than just Tesla.
So basically, all he needs to do is release the Cybertruck. Boom.
That'll
problem
fix
solved.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, that'll help overall. But there was another thing too here. I wasn't aware. They've just reinstated free charging for a 3-year period on the Model S and the Model X. I mean, that's a marketing move, right? You know, you do that sort of thing because sales are not working. You got to entice the customer to come in, and it
looked like sales were down.
Yeah, and Bernstein, you know, the analyst group is saying that maybe they're going to have to offer free FSD trials, so you get, you know, maybe entice people to pay the full $15,000 for that. And Bernstein's also saying maybe Tesla's going to have to start advertising, which would be a shock if it had to resort to that. But, you know, Gary Farley also made an interesting point. He said, you know, Elon Musk is going to learn that product refreshment is really important. And, you know, with the exception of a very mild facelift and a very tasteful facelift too on the S and the X, what was that, 5 years ago or something like that, they haven't updated the styling of their cars. And I wonder and I'm just asking, you know, inventory building, back orders going down, price cutting going on, is Tesla hitting an inflection point where it's starting to look like a regular old legacy automaker? I know that's heresy to say, and I don't buy it myself, but I'm asking the question.
I think in terms of product sales, it certainly can be. I mean, there's other things they're doing that the way they work with technology that'll still be different, and their attitude is fundamentally different. But you look at S and X, and you look at EQS and EQE, and you look at i7, and you go, well, you know, you do have competition with some pretty attractive and interesting electric vehicles from automakers with a better quality history overall, and with some pretty amazing interiors. So, you know, Tesla doesn't have, you know, that space to themselves. Taycan made a dent in that, but wasn't apparently enough to get Musk as concerned as S and X are. But I do think that product refreshes matter. And it's interesting that Farley said that, because there are several products at Ford that suffered from not getting enough refresh. I mean, we all remember some Tauruses and Fusions that they did mid-cycle enhancements, which were amazing powertrain updates and amazing technology updates, and they barely nipped and tucked the exteriors, and the updates didn't get the traction that they should have for how much effort was under the skin.
Yeah. Hey,
So-
by the way,
Well-
Taycan sales looks like they're slowing down too.
Yeah.
Well, you know, to be fair to Tesla, which I'm usually not, so this is a break from tradition. You know, we've got to keep in mind a couple of things here. Yes, there are new competitors, but the pie is getting bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got to, you know, so it's no longer just a Tesla game, but there are more people who are interested in buying electric vehicles. And John, to the point of, you know, providing, you know, the free charging for the S and the X, well, this just goes exactly to what you were saying about how it's been 5 years since they did anything to those cars. So, you know, is this going to cost them as much as it would cost for, I don't know, a Super Bowl ad? I doubt it.
Oh yeah,
So
no,
for
you're
that
right.
slight
Great point.
that slight increment, they can make a
Right.
difference. And the
Right.
same thing
Maybe.
goes to trials for FSD. Okay, they've already developed the technology. The
Right.
stuff is in the cars. All they do is flip a switch. Boom, you've got it. And if you want to keep it, buy it.
Totally
It's
agree.
interesting that they did the trial. They're doing a trial on the FSD because also some of the fundamental pricing changes that Ford had was Blue Cruise went to a 90-day trial, and in the pricing updates on the Mach-E too. Back to the point about the battery, the regular lithium-ion battery price did not change, and Blue Cruise with a few more features went up $200. So that's now then the second company that's saying, I'm going to put this feature on as a trial for a certain period to get it in. Although $15,000 is a lot more money than $2,200.
Yeah.
But still, like, that may be part of it, because it is a feature that some people are going to have to experience to decide that they really need it.
That's right.
I haven't experienced Tesla's full self-driving, but the Blue Cruise and Super Cruise and the hands-free and BMW and Mercedes are amazing systems. I love them. I've enjoyed every time I've had a long drive in one of them. And when I think about my personal car, sometimes I don't drive as much. I don't drive as far. And I would ask myself, do I really need to spend a few $1,000s on this? And I might not. As much as when I'm on a trip or when I'm testing new cars, I love it. And I think it's a great system. I don't know if it truly fits in my life. So you're going to have people who say technology is great and don't know that they want to try it. I'm saying that after I've driven it. And when you've got people who haven't yet driven it, they may be hesitant to spend the money on something they don't understand what the benefit is.
Yeah. John, I want to ask you about these price changes. And when we had Sandy on the show and he explained about the control that Tesla has over all of the information about what's going on with its vehicles and what it's selling, what it's not selling, and it has the info immediately. And this is not the same for companies like Ford or General Motors or even Toyota. And so my question to you is that, okay, does the average person who goes into a Ford dealer the same as the average person who's going to buy a Tesla? And would that average buyer, either side, feel more or less comfortable about these switches in price that are happening at a pace that we've never seen before in this industry?
I think it's going to upset the consumer. Should I buy right now because maybe the price is going to drop, or maybe I better buy right now because the price is going to go up? It just adds confusion into a market that is so hard for the average consumer. I mean, look, the three of us, we devote our careers to this. We're into this every single day, and it's so bloody hard to keep up with everything that's going on. Imagine somebody who only steps into the market every 3 to 5 years or something like that for a new car. Yep. I mean, this is why there's so much brand loyalty. It's just so much easier to go back to the same dealer and the same brand and buy something that you're familiar with. But Gary, getting back to your point, you're absolutely right. Offering free charging on the S and the X isn't going to cost Tesla much money at all. And same with FSD trials. It's not going to cost it anything or next to nothing. The reason I'm raising this, though, is Tesla's never had to do this in the past, or not the recent past, certainly. It's a well-established company, and now it's cutting prices. And we talked about inventory and back orders, and that's my question. I don't want to see it happen. Is it turning into a legacy automaker here? And I say I don't want to have that happen because Tesla has actually done this industry a great service. It's kicked it in the ass like nothing else that ever has, and is forcing it to question everything that it's done in the past, and trying new ways. And that's only going to benefit the consumer in the long run.
It's a really interesting question, John. And one of the things that just occurred to me about this question, though, is it kind of depends on what their attitude is. If their attitude, which does seem to be at the moment, that we want to also sell 20 million units at some point in the future. We want to be the volume. We want every car on the road to be Tesla. Well, then, yep, they're going to start doing some really crazy things. Because then they started deciding that volume is the concern and volume is the goal. I mean, Tesla's sales are still growing. The production is still growing, even as they have to share some EV market with other EV vehicles. Their overall market share is still growing. And at the end of the day, ICE vehicles owners have to be convinced to buy electric vehicles. I mean, they're still positioned for tons of growth, but do they ultimately need to start advertising? John, you're right. People come in and out. They don't necessarily pay attention all the time. I compare it to when we buy a new television and I get the information about what the television needs to be. It gets hung on the wall and you ask me 6 months later, what size is it? I'm like, I don't know. It's big. I can see it. Like, that's it. Like, that's how I feel about televisions, not how I feel about cars. But a lot of car buyers do. And it's confusing and it's difficult out there. And so when they need to get to that extra volume and they need to get to ICE owners that are maybe curious now or weren't thinking about it before, those owners need to learn a lot of information about the company. And you're going to have to start to proactively communicate that, whether it's a specific advertising, because there's so many digital opportunities now, so many platforms. It doesn't need to be the Super Bowl. They don't need brand recognition on the Super Bowl level, but are they going to have to start communicating to people who are maybe curious about it and you want to get them in? Yeah, they're going to have to start doing that. And if they prioritize volume above all else, they're going to start behaving a little bit more traditional. Because
but I want to know whether the traditionals are becoming more like Tesla. So Steph, you mentioned Mercedes and the EQE and the EQS, and they announced a subscription package that you can buy to boost your horsepower in the EQE from 288 horsepower to 348 horsepower, and an EQS from 355 to 435. So you can get it monthly for $60 a month, yearly for $600 a year, or for the lifetime of the vehicle of $1,950 or $2,950 for the big pack. So when did traditional automakers ever think about things that they would over the air update? I mean, it's a Tesla thing, right? And so
I find it interesting because I think that Tesla sort of pointed to it, but I don't think that Tesla happened in a vacuum and there was nobody else who thought about doing this. But Mercedes, GM, Ford, Volkswagen, Toyota, everyone's looking at their over-the-air revenue. Everyone sees that as a constant opportunity right now. And I think that Tesla, because they were small and just tech oriented, were able to do it faster. I remember when they first started doing it, GM talked about, well, we've got so many vehicles on the road. Even if we could, what's really going to happen if we push an over the update to 3 million vehicles? And Tesla was doing it with 50,000 and figured out how to make it all work. And they're learning traditional audio, right? You're right, John. Got a kick in the butt, said you have to do this, but they figured it out. There's potential for a huge amount of revenue. And I think that Tesla made that happen faster. But we're going to see a lot more of that.
Look,
that Mercedes thing is just the tip of the iceberg for that.
They did more than do it faster. They invented the whole thing. I mean, no legacy automaker at all was thinking of a centralized computing system. None of them were thinking about doing a software-defined car. You know why they weren't thinking about it? They didn't even know it was possible. Exactly. They didn't even know that existed. The way that Tesla changed it is it came from a tech company standpoint, a Silicon Valley software-driven company that changed this auto industry. And so
even as Tesla
they're not even there yet. Mercedes is talking about all this stuff. Mercedes will have its new electronic architecture in its cars in 2025. So in 2025, Mercedes-Benz will catch up to where Tesla was in 2010. That's how far behind the industry is on all this stuff. Now, I don't know where Tesla is going to be in 2025, but I'm sure it's still going to be ahead of Mercedes.
And I think there's a lot of technology that has evolved as this happened. And you don't disagree that Tesla sort of pushed it along that way and kicked it and said, wait a second, you guys need to be thinking about this. But I don't think that it would have not happened without Tesla.
All right.
It would have happened sometime around 2035.
Maybe.
I want to switch slightly here, just slightly, and say something nice about Mr. Farley. So as we talked about, I believe last week, General Motors makes the announcement of getting rid of Apple CarPlay, and Farley was asked whether or not they would do that, and he says, no, we're going to keep it. And this is I think a great quote. Talking about streamed entertainment going into the car, he said, quote, "We kind of lost that battle 10 years ago, and that 70% of Ford customers are Apple customers, and there's no way they're going to make the switch." So, props to him for doing that. And, Steph, this sort of gets to your point of, these companies who are saying, we know what the consumer wants. And we've seen this pushback already against General Motors for making this decision, because General Motors wants to have its system in there rather than the system that lots and lots and lots of people use. Is that being tone deaf, or are they trying to be like Tesla?
Both. I think that GM jumped the gun a little bit on that, and the way that kind of just rolled out. It's not really a statement, but just a couple of news stories, and it just kind of pulled out that way. It's a change that consumers aren't ready to make. And what consumers will need in order to make that kind of change is to have the system that's in the GM that it would behave better and be more intuitive and easier to operate than the CarPlay system is. And where I think that, looking at what they're talking about right now, sort of the downfall of it is you still end up Bluetoothing your phone to your car if you want to have a phone conversation. And as much as maps are important, I mean, the main reason you stick in is if you then have to do something else that's less comfortable to talk on the phone. I think that's not great. But having said that too, the theory, I think, behind a Google navigation embedded and a Google Assistant embedded is you then can connect it into the computer in a way that the car doesn't. So in theory, on technology and features that are still being developed, you should have better access to the car using a Google Assistant that's embedded in the car than talking to your Siri on your cell phone that isn't connected to the car. Navigation should get better information on how the health of the vehicle than if you use your Apple Maps navigation, because your Apple Maps navigation knows nothing about your car, but the Google embedded navigation does. So there is opportunity to create a system that is better, but they have to prove it. And it has to be out, and people have to see it and understand it and start to want it. And if you go starting this way, saying, no, you just can't have what you like, isn't pulling them along. It's pushing them. And I think there is going to be there has been some backlash. Whether or not it ultimately hurts sales, we'll wait and see. But I do think that that's kind of the crux of the problem. And part of the reason people used Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in place of embedded navigation in the beginning was because it worked better. It wasn't because your phone is your favorite thing. It was because it worked better. Because you could, do Google, I want McDonald's in Detroit, and get a McDonald's in Detroit. Your embedded navigation system would give you the 5 restaurants around your house, and you could never scroll long enough to get to something that was a distance. That I think is the crux of why the CarPlay and the Android Auto worked better. It just was an easier interface, and the car couldn't do it at that point. So that's how you get, if you really want people to stop using CarPlay, you give them a better mousetrap, you give them a better system, you give them something that works better, and it can be created. But if you just have this, I think that mine works better, but you still have to Bluetooth your phone, and I'm just going to take you where your CarPlay. You're not convincing consumers at that point that it is better. You need to convince them.
But this goes back to what you were saying earlier about convincing people to buy an EV. And so General Motors is basically saying, oh, buy an EV, a technology you're probably not comfortable with. And oh, by the way, we know that you have Apple products throughout your house, and we probably have one in your purse or in your pocket, but you can't use that either. That's crazy.
I think that I think they needed to, I don't know what they'll end up doing. And it does sound like a decision that you could reverse if you wanted to. I don't know for sure, but I think that's the difficulty in that decision. They needed to prove their system was better before they took away what people are comfortable with.
Let's see what they come out with.
Yeah,
because to your point, Steph, and I agree completely with you, they've got to show that their system's better, at least as good, and probably better to get people to switch. But speaking of General Motors, some big news this week, some management changes. Steve Carlisle, who had been running all of North America, is retiring. Rory Harvey, the guy who had been running Cadillac, an Englishman, is now going to run North America. Yeah. A guy named John Roth, I don't know him at all. He's going to run Cadillac. But the one that really caught my attention is Josh Tavel, and I think you guys know him. He had been running all the electric car, truck, and SUV stuff for GM. And he's going from executive chief engineer to global vice president. He's going to be handling, I think it's after sales and stuff, which I don't know anybody in this industry who actually aspires to run that, but it's an important part of the business. And it sure looks to me like GM is rounding this guy out. He's only 44 years old. And to go from, exec chief engineer to global vice president, what a move. I mean, I'm reading it that these guys got, big plans for him in the future.
I would think that would be true as well. The other thing is, aftercare and customer sales and customer service for EVs. If you've got somebody who understands, the EV build up, everything about what's going into those vehicles and can kind of think ahead of what consumers might need on that after sales and aftercare area, you're going to make your EV adoption go better. So there is a very logical reason for putting your electric vehicle expert in that space. I think that is probably I think you're right. They're running him out, but it's also a smart move because those are the vehicles that they've prioritized. And those are the vehicles that their own customer care and service is still learning how to figure out how to support them. As much as they've had Bolt for several years, there's still some learnings that have to happen there. So why not have your engineer who helped develop them help you figure out the best way to take care of them and support those customers?
See, I think what's more interesting is the fact that Steve Carlisle, what was his job before he became president of GM North America? Yeah, so
I saw that.
So you head Cadillac, and then your next job will be you get to run North America.
North America. I was like,
so Josh Tavel has to get a Cadillac job.
There you go, Gary. I got a question for you. What do you make of Lordstown Motors? Foxconn warned them this week that it may back out of the deal it's got with them because their stock dropped below $1 and they're in danger of getting delisted. And what do you think? I'd love to see these guys make it, but this looks a little bleak.
I saw that a micro mobility company that makes scooters I'm serious, I'm not making this up. They're talking about perhaps having their scooters manufactured in that plant.
But remember, that's not a Lordstown Motors plant anymore. That's a Foxconn plant.
Right. And so you contracted Foxconn, right? So Foxconn is basically saying, okay, we gave you a lifeline. Okay, Lordstown Motors needed money to keep going. They come in to the rescue, we'll be the manufacturer of this. We'll take over the facility and run things for you. And now they're like, this isn't working out. And, they're seeing, and the millions that they invested. And if it's like, I think their stock was trading yesterday at like 48 cents. It's like, so, the question that I have is that, okay, so if you look at Lordstown and Steph, maybe you have a good sense of this. Faraday Future, aren't they in production now?
Yeah.
It's just
last week.
Are they?
And there was an announcement in the last 5 or 6 days, last week or so.
Yeah, and so the question becomes that, okay, is as we were talking about Elon before. He found out that making stuff isn't easy. It's making cars is hard, and I think that the Lordstown endurance is not going to endure.
Yeah. Okay, I got one more topic for you guys before we wrap this up. Sean Fain, head of the UAW, came out yesterday and said the UAW is not going to endorse President Biden for his reelection unless he does something about getting higher wages for all these EV jobs, these battery plants. I think for going back to Lordstown, but this is Lordstown, Ohio, where GM has got that LG plant. I think the starting wage is $16.50 an hour. No wonder they're having problems trying to get people to what do you guys think? Steph, start with you. What do you make of this? Hard talk from the UAW.
It's harder talk than it's been in a long time, I feel like. And he's really coming guns blazing. And I just hope there's a resolution because I feel like a strike in the fall is just about the thing we don't need. The industry could use a 2023 that went relatively smoothly. You throw a strike in the fall to one or to all three, and anything we expected for this year is out the window. And, the UAW has legitimate complaints. They have concerns. They're always looking for, a little bit more. And that's what their job is. Not that they shouldn't get more, but wow, he's coming in hot. He's coming in really hot. And I don't know I don't know how well it's going to work, but he certainly has potential to create a lot of chaos in the meantime. I think that's interesting. On the battery side of it, I would look at what other component plants' salaries and rates are. I don't have that on the top of my head, but that's kind of where I would start to wonder is on the battery plant. It's a battery components plant. Yeah. And components plants, as I understand, are not typically as high as assembly plants. So maybe it makes sense within the cost structure. Maybe you still fight to get more, but maybe it's not as bad as it sounds. I'm not, hourly rates are not my field of expertise. So
any thoughts on that, Gary?
Well, okay, so Fain said, here's his quote: "The federal government is pouring billions into the electric vehicle transition with no strings attached and no commitment to workers. The EV transition is at serious risk of becoming a race to the bottom. We want to see national leadership have our back on this before we make any commitments." Okay, so is he right that they're pouring billions of dollars into the EV transition? Absolutely right. Are there strings? Well, yes, there are. But are these strings associated necessarily with workers that are represented by the UAW? Nope. Okay, so he's got part of that right. EV transitions at serious risk of becoming a race to the bottom. Well, as Steph, as you pointed out earlier, nobody's making money on these things yet. So what bottom? I mean, what? Yeah. Where's the race? And then he says, we want to see national leadership have our back on this before we make any commitments. I mean, I think Joe Biden is probably the most friendly union guy that has existed in the White House in my lifetime.
I think the White House initially wanted the incentives to be tied to UAW plants, and that didn't. Right. That wasn't going to pass that way. Right. So they tried.
Yeah, and who's going to be friendlier? I mean, I just don't. I don't know. He's, I mean, maybe he's saying this for effect. I don't know. What do you think, John?
Well, look, I love Stephanie's way of describing it. Sean Fain is coming in hot. He's out to show that there's a different sheriff in town right now, and I believe there's absolutely going to be a strike this fall. We've talked about it on the show before. The chatter out there is that they're going to take all three of the Detroit 3 down, not pick one target, negotiate with it, and then get the other two to go in, that they're going to take all 3 down. But I think in GM's case with LG, they probably set the starting wage at $16.50 an hour, knowing full well the UAW is going to raise this as an issue in negotiations, and they're going to negotiate with it to where it should be. Whereas if they had started with where it should be, it would just go higher from there. So why not start low and let the union get a victory by negotiating it up? But having said that, very interesting that Sean Fain is making EV jobs and the pay that goes along with them going to be an issue in the presidential election, because as you guys know, EVs are already a political hot potato. Many Republicans, I should say, seem to be dead set against them. Many Democrats seem to be very much in favor of them. So there's already it's been politicized. And now for Sean Fain to come in on the labor side and make an issue out of it, yowza. That's why I wanted to bring the subject up, because I'm just finding it fascinating.
And I think it's interesting he's picked the wage issue when the bigger issue would be if it takes fewer people to make EVs.
Look, that's an issue with them too.
It feels like a longer-term, bigger problem.
Look, Sean Fain is not a one-topic union leader. He's hopping mad about the jobs that might go away too.
And that's, I don't have the answer for how to fix that. And we, accept that the automakers know. Every time we come into another union negotiation, GM and Ford and Stellantis have been working with these unions for 100 years, 60 years, 80 years. And they know. They don't necessarily know how to fix every problem that comes up, but this is a dance that they do every 4 years. They do this with unions in other countries and other parts of the world. It can cause a ton of havoc, and it can create chaos, and it can cost money, and it can hurt the industry, even as they're trying to help people. But the process in and of itself is something that they understand. And there's probably nothing that Sean Fain has said that they didn't think of themselves. They know what they're going to have to manage. They know they're going to have to manage a situation ultimately at some point down the road where it takes fewer workers to produce an electric vehicle than it does to produce a nice car. That's going to have to be dealt with at some point. and maybe not this particular negotiation, but everybody knows this is gonna, it's part of the process. And the policy
John,
has
is
said,
the jobs bank going to come back?
No, the jobs bank will not come back.
Well, you got these extra workers. And,
Yeah. Look, the jobs bank was one of the things that sank the big three, drove Chrysler and GM into bankruptcy. They were paying each of them were paying workers $1 billion a year to not work. That's never coming back again. It's just
not each worker,
happen.
by the way. So
not each worker.
Let's be clear.
But nonetheless, hey, look, this is good stuff, but we're probably at a time where we should wrap this up, and we'll continue this conversation.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Great having you here. Great having you back.
Being on the show, so thanks for having me back again.
Yeah.
Thanks,
You bet. Well, good. And Gary, we got another great one coming up next week too.
We
So
do.
we'll pick up more of these topics again then.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
See y'all.
See you.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey. And by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
If you like this program and would like to learn more about the automotive industry, check out our website at autoline.tv or look for us on YouTube on the Autoline channel.